Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the tasting for Club number 29, To Your Health, the Wines of Asclepius. We're really excited to be here. Kind of a quick turnaround from the last club. We wanted to go back to Greece, which is where we were for our members' sort of scouting tour in March. This was a topic that was actually one we brought up pretty early on in the process of the club, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. Something we wanted to visit, and we were really inspired by a couple of the sites we visited over there, primarily the site of Epidaurus, which is what you see here in the picture, the best preserved ancient Greek theater in the world. But this site actually, although it's known now for the theater, is actually in antiquity famous for having a sanctuary of Asclepius, where sort of an all-around health center where people would come and pray to the god and seek different kinds of treatment and wellness and whatnot. And also on the trip, we had the opportunity to visit, as you know, quite a few wineries. And one of the topics that kept coming up was that of sort of vineyard health, and how do you how do you use wine for your own well-being? How do you take care of vineyards and the role it plays in kind of health and wellness? So this seemed like a really good way to marry those two topics into one club. So the wines of Asclepius just sort of fell naturally, and then we also got to use several of the wines that we tried while we were over there, which is also cool. So as usual, what we'll do is we'll go through each of the 4 wines. We have the 3 club wines, and then we have 1 special offer wine, which I know some of you have in hand. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, if there's a gap in the conversation, feel free to do that as well. But we only have 2 computers going at the moment, mine and then the guys you can see all together there. So we may not be able to get all the questions right as they come up, but we'll definitely have time at the end to take care of any inquiries, questions you might have. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of move it over here to the next slide, kind of get you in the topic. This is the 4 of us here at Epidaurus on the left, and then some of the remains there as well.
Yeah, they went to Epidaurus. Remember, we went there. They're standing at the bottom of the big amphitheater thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If we can make sure everybody's on mute here. Perfect. Oh yeah, perfect. Great.
I am really glad to hear we have other members who are
Yeah,
out at Epidaurus. For those of you who are feeling jealous right now because you haven't been to Epidaurus, you will get the opportunity to come with us to Epidaurus hopefully next year, but more about that later.
All right.
Sorry, Jeff, keep going. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay, and then this is our first wine here from Trupus Winery, which is one of the wineries that we had the opportunity, the good fortune to visit. So I'm going to turn this over to Dana to walk us through.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah, this was really a really fun club to do because, again, this is following on the tail end of our expeditionary trip out to Greece. We're really excited about the opportunity to take all of you guys with us to these places and also to check out some of these amazing wines. Being at some of these sites, Jeff and I taught Greek mythology together at UC Berkeley for years. My first time seeing many of these, it was a real treat. And we're not going to get into the archaeology and the mythology. That's kind of what the club sections are. So we can talk about the wines on this, in this setting. But really a fantastic, fun experience. We also, we're just at some of these sites and meeting some of these winemakers. And Trupus is a perfect example of that. Trupus is actually not far from Epidaurus. It's situated in the Mantinea Plateau in the Photeri winemaking region of the Peloponnese. And we had a lot of fun, again, visiting these sites, but also visiting these wineries. And Trupus is a really fantastic place. A little bit about the Mantinea Plateau. It's really unique in the sense that it provides a microclimate. You've got these clay, rocky soils situated on a plateau, which is 700 meters above sea level. But at the same time, you're protected from heat, and you are, it's actually quite cool. So that makes it the perfect growing conditions for Moscofilero, which is and I have to look this up, the PDO, the Protected Designation of Origin grape, which is grown in this region, is Moscofilero. some of you guys might have tried Moscafilero before, and you're familiar with this grape. It's actually perfect in this sense because it's late ripening and also very susceptible to heat. And we can get into the taste a little bit here too, because this wine is 100% Moscafilero. And again, this microclimate of Mantinea is perfect for making this wine. Trupus is a relatively new operation. The family has been making wine since the 1970s. They actually only started the winery in 2010. And they sort of did it at the worst possible time at the height of the economic crisis, but they were able to make it work. And we had a fantastic time getting out there and meeting Kostas and Panagiota. Panagiota is the daughter of Yanis Trupus, who kind of started the operation, and they are continuing it. The winery focuses again primarily on Moscafilero, but they're very dynamic in what they're doing with it. They've got 7 hectares of Moscafilero, another hectare of Acertico that they're experimenting with. But unlike a lot of other winemakers in the region, their philosophy is really to intervene as little as possible. This is not a natural wine in the sense of some of the ones that we've had in the past where, we're talking about biodynamic wines with no intervention. We're talking about a balanced approach. There are some sulfates in this, but again, it's an organic production process that really is different from what you might see elsewhere in the region. This wine particularly is kind of unique. It was actually rejected from the Mantinea appellation for being "quote unquote" untypical. And as you know from Ancient Wines 101, untypical is what we're all about, and we absolutely love this wine. Moscafilero is a grape. It's a white grape, but it actually has sort of some color to the skin. It's purple, purpley pink. And this wine does see 2 days of skin contact, which gives it that really nice, beautiful kind of peachy color. It's unfiltered. It's unfined. Well, there's a little bit of sulfates that are added for stability, but but it is unfined. And you really see what this grape is capable under these conditions and at a site like this. So let's go on and taste this untypical wine.
The other thing I was going to add is that Trupus is one of the first winery to make a rosé or skin contact Moscafilero. They did in 2016.
Yeah.
And this holy mania and just skin pinkish Moscafilero was what Costas said. This is how our grandfathers drank wine. So it's kind of interesting that the white version of Moscafilero has become now like what people think is standard, whereas this is considered untypical, even though it used to be what people.
Let me read a quote by Yanis Trupus. He said, "This Moscafilero, as our fathers and our grandfathers remember it, skin contact, spontaneous yeast fermentation, unfiltered with only the barest amounts of sulfates. This is our homage to wines in the nature of in the high plateau of Mantinea that's been made for millennia." So again, exactly as T just said. This was an attempt to actually get back at something which is a little bit more original, and what you would have experienced, generations ago, in this special place and with a very special wine. The site actually is pretty interesting too. Just to throw a little archaeology your way, we actually, as we were pulling into it, we saw that there was a archaeological site which was excavated by the French on the other side of the vineyard. Oh, the lights went out. Oh, that's nice. And it's actually the Mantinea, for you history buffs that are following, you might remember the first battle of Mantinea, which happened in 418. This is the largest land battle of the Peloponnese, where the Spartans and their allies and the Athenians and their allies are duking it out right in the plain there. Right where the grapes in your glass are coming from. We didn't hear anything about people finding now 2 swords and helmets but I'll tell you, they probably just wouldn't say anything.
I have to say, when we were there, and when I learned, that this was this battle site.
Mhm.
It does look like a pretty good place to have a battle. It's pretty flat,
Mhm.
surrounded by mountains, and so you can see how strategically it would be an important place. But the actual like where the vineyards are, like relatively flat, but only very very gentle slopes around where the vineyards are for Chupas. So
Yeah.
Actually, the site of the second Battle of Mantinea as well, 362. So yeah,
Right.
both different, famous for different reasons. First one was Athens and Sparta, of course, and the second one was Sparta and Thebes.
Mhm.
Sort of that battle, and the second one's actually even more consequential, I think, because it was the kind of marked the end of the the different polis going against each other and open the door for Philip II, father of Alexander the Great. It weakened Thebes and Sparta so much that second battle that was when Philip stepped in and started taking over Greek cities. So it's pretty important. And then the other thing to think about there, we talked about this a lot when we were there, but the way that Greek armies actually fought during this period, pre-Hellenistic period, required a big flat plain. So it was kind of a fixed almost like a predetermined time they're going to get together and fight and it had to be on a flat plain, just the way that they're the way that the hoplite armies were organized. So it's all kind of, it's cool when you're there and you're tasting the wine and touring the vineyards, but then there's this history right there under your feet too. So pretty cool.
Percent.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about being there when we were there, Jeff, if you could go over the next slide, is also the winemaking practices. So you can actually see some of the differences, right, in techniques, organic practices. Again, this isn't a biodynamic wine. It's like low intervention. It's not no intervention. But you can see right in the slide right here the difference of what that looks like, in the vineyard. And that's not to say that necessarily, right, it's a pretty stark difference. It looks, like one is dead and one's not. But you can have perfectly healthy, fine wines that are made, using standard winemaking practices. But at this time of year, as T was kind of saying, like the devil's in the details. You can kind of see what's happening in terms of the winemaking approach, and this was something that we saw time and time and time again as we were traveling and visiting some of these vineyards.
Yeah. Danny, do you want to take us through this wine?
Oh yeah. We should probably taste this wine. So Muscafalero is sort of famous for its aromatics. That's one thing that really typifies it. It also creates a wine of really fantastic acidity, and that's what I'm getting out of this glass. We talked already about the 2 days of skin contact, maceration in cement eggs, and it's just, again, it speaks for itself. I really like the salinity of this. I like the kind of peachy notes, the kind of the exotic sort of fruited components. I don't know. What are you guys getting out of
It's
this?
definitely like a fruit salad, like lychee. I get a lot of like kind of like ripe candied grapefruit sort of notes to it. Like a Moscafilero. So first of all, just a little Greek grape lesson. Mosco, when you'll see many grapes that actually have the Mosco prefix attached to the name. Mosco meaning like aromatic. I think it has to do with it's related to the word musky, but also it just basically an aromatic version of a grape called Filero or Fileri. So this is the aromatic version. I believe the actual original Fileri grape is no longer in production, if you will. So this is kind of like the resulting grape. But so aromatic is the first thing that you would describe with the Mosco Filero. And like Dana's saying, also really bright acidity. So it's something that you can get a lot of that. Sometimes kind of like dry Gewürztraminer style. You get some floral tones to it as well. Though this is obviously definitely not sweet, but you get a lot of that. You said stone fruit, peaches, kind of like stone fruit skin, if you will, because of the skin contact here. But yeah, for me, I mean, it's something that a lot of people get kind of maybe scared by aromatic wines. They think, oh, it's gonna be really floral. That means it's gonna be sweet. This is a really, I think, a great example of something that has a lot of freshness, a lot of fruit, a lot of just again jumping out of the glass aromatics, but your palate wants more. Yeah. It's not something that you're going to be immediately like saturated and heavy with all these like kind of cloying flavors. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Costas and Benegiata, they walked us through probably, what was it, 14 wines?
Yep.
Jeff, you go back to that slide again. I think there's the fallen soldiers from an afternoon.
Right there.
Really amazing stuff, and they just continue to really experiment with Moscafilero in these different ways, different root stocks, bringing back varietals that are common, that were common. Again, styles and varietals like Colini Akito, which is another varietal that they're trying to bring back. Phenomenal stuff. The name too, we should also speak to this, has an ancient origin too. So Holy Mania, they actually named this after, and you guys remember from our wines of Demeter and wines of Dionysus. The idea that a lot of these, we've actually never done a wines of Dionysus.
We have not. Yeah.
It's a little too on the nose, so we've been like working around it. But celebrations and rituals associated with Dionysus, particularly, the Maenads, the Bacchantes, these were celebrations which really were the perfect example of duality, right? With wine, they were, a product of civilization, but at the same time, right, when pushed too far, madness would be, the result. And so you see that playing out in these mythological themes and also the religious practice of the ancient Greeks. So Holy Mania is kind of a perfect example, and they named it that as a homage to Dionysus and and his love of wine and sort of manic mission to bring it to the world. So
the other thing I would say about this wine too is that I think the skin contact gives it this kind of, I get this citrus oil, like the bitterness from like a grapefruit or a citrus peel, which I think is really nice, as Ryan was saying earlier.
Yeah,
for
totally.
Like being a good food wine, not seemingly overcloying or sweet. And one thing that'd be interesting is for those of you who have it, when we taste it, compare it with the Tomi, which is a more classical rosé.
Manzanilla, yeah, completely. Yeah, absolutely.
See, what would you pair this with?
Cool.
That's I would say, anything like a white cheese or like a spanakopita or something would be really good.
Yeah.
I like that. Absolutely. Jeff, how about you? What would you have this with?
Yeah, I like this. So it's kind of interesting. You made that comment about the other one, which we'll be going through later, the fourth kind of special offer wine. But I was kind of thinking, honestly, with both these, almost like because there's that sensation of sweetness, even though it doesn't have the sweet. So it's almost like thinking like an orange chicken or something, like not something we normally think of when we're thinking of wine pairings, but something like that has that kind of sweet and sour, almost like
something that pairs with salinity for sure. Fats, fats and acidity.
One, just jumping to the chat really quick, Jim mentioned, I hope your wine club can have some Assyrtiko sometime. Definitely watch this space, Jim. There will definitely be some Assyrtiko. I think we may have done an Assyrtiko in the past. If not, we will definitely be be revisiting that variety. Quick note,
we use it for event.
We use it for a few events, but quick note about that variety. It's actually really fascinating. Assyrtiko is a variety that's doing very well commercially in Greece, partly based on the Santorini-based expressions that have kind of gotten worldwide acclaim. But you're now seeing the grape actually be planted and trialed in almost every region of Greece. They are finding that it can do very well in hotter climates, cooler climates, different type, drier, wetter climates, parts of Greece. And so they're really kind of adopting it as this variety that is going to be more and more emblematic of what Greek wine can do. Because again, you can make skin contact with it. You can make it like a very serious wine. You can use it for lighter, more like refreshing styles. So Assyrtiko is something that when we were there, I feel like every winery we were going to, they were talking about it. In Nemea, in Nemea, in the Western Peloponnese, everywhere we went, someone was saying, "Okay, yeah, we're actually doing trials with Assyrtiko." So,
and that was the case with Troopus. Troopus, I think it was about 2 years ago. They planted their first hectare.
So we were literally when we were there. I think I don't know which bottle it was, but I think he had one of their first releases of Assyrtiko, and so it's something that's just coming onto the scene. And again, it's not a grape that was typically produced in a lot of these regions, but they're updating their understanding of what these varieties can do, and I think that's great. So again, we've talked many times on these chats about like modernization, the golden age of wine in many of these places like Eastern Europe and in Greece, and that this innovation, this willingness to try new stuff, and to try new grapes is really part of it. So
Mhm.
so anyways, a long way of saying there will be more Assyrtiko in the Ancient Wines Club, definitely in the future.
Jim, send us an email. We got stuff in the locker. We're going to try to make some of that stuff available to you guys on the website too, moving forward. So you'll be able to have a little more. If there's something special you want, never hesitate to reach out to us too. We can find some.
Always happy.
Yeah, almost guarantee on the Greece trip you'll try and assert to go at every single winery next year. I mean, I think we did have it at every single winery.
Yep,
I think that's right. That's
And again, it wasn't always the flagship wine that they had kind of, you know, building their brand around, but they're all messing around with it, like you said, Ryan. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the one thing they kept emphasized, they're like, this Assyrtiko is different than the Santorini. The expression of it is
Yeah, it
different.
is.
Like,
It is.
It has a
Yeah.
terroir. It speaks to
Yeah.
the region.
Yeah.
It's like this is
Yeah.
how it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like half the price too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Santorini and Assyrtiko, I mean, it's a small island. There's not that many hectares of vineyard, so
and people are converting it to hotels because it's much financially safer. You don't have to deal with the weather and like potential loss of harvest, and pretty much guarantee an income from tourists.
Put a pair of angel wings in your Instagrammable, right?
Shall I move on to the next wine? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Do you want to pass me the Limnion?
Yep.
So wine number 2 from Domaine Zafirakis, which is a producer that we've worked with before. I believe for trying to think which one. Oh, I think it was Wines of the Winds that we used, Microcosmos, I think.
Yeah.
It was.
So we had a Malaguzia from this producer before that you may remember. But they are based in Tyrnavos, the village of Tyrnavos, which is the PDO, in Thessaly, in sort of central, I would say like northern central Greece, roughly. And so this is a wine made from a grape called Limnion or Limniona. This is one of the most historic varieties in the Greek enological record, if you will, written about by Aristotle, written about by, I'm pretty sure, Pliny the Elder, some of the other, like throughout history, it's been referenced over and over and over again as this very kind of ancient grape that has some of the earliest, records of it being a single variety. So it's a grape that you see again more so in this Thessaly and farther north. We didn't really see any Limnion in the Peloponnese in the south. I don't recall. So it's not really something you see down there as much. More in central and northern Greece. So Domaine Zafirakis, Christos Zafirakis here has a sizable estate in Thessaly here that producing everything organic. So biohellas, biohellas, however they pronounce it, is the Greek certification for organic. So everything is organic. And then he's also implementing biodynamic practices as well. So one of the reasons that we picked this wine, in addition to it being very delicious, is the implementation of biodynamics was part of the theme of this club. Again, talking a bit about health as in a holistic sense. Like this is kind of really like this concept that we kind of got into was about, not only our, your personal health as it relates to the wines of Asclepius, but also vineyard health and wine and health and these ancient kind of perceptions of wine and health. And so biodynamic practices, again, are something that is, again, relatively new as far as history is concerned, but implementing like ancient understandings of moon cycles, these more holistic interpretations of agriculture, with the idea to be able to produce a more sustainable, holistic, and sort of symbiotic, if you will, ecosystem in the vineyard. Again, that's a very kind of quick overview, very, very quick overview of the kind of biodynamic method and ideology there. But we love these wines because, again, it shows that you may not even know that it's biodynamic or anything like that. At the end of the day, does the wine taste good? This is something that I think we kind of come back to it over and over again, is like you can have these, wonderful wines, like T was saying, you can be made in a wide variety of ways, but at the end of the day, is the wine good for you as the drinker? Now, considering health and things like that, obviously vineyard worker health, people making the wines, like, do you use pesticides? Do you use, herbicides? On the, I think it's the last slide, we have a side-by-side vineyard of a vineyard that's clearly been sprayed with herbicides, fungicides versus one that hasn't. Again, these are things that it's actually very interesting to go to wine regions in April and May before all the leaves come out. So you can actually sort of see, sometimes we call it like the dirty laundry, if you will, of the farming of like, okay, who's really trying to control everything and who's also letting some things kind of evolve as a living being in their vineyard. So I'm not going to make some grand statement about what is better or what is necessarily healthier for the end consumer, us here. But it is something that is I would say like a pretty hot debate in the wine world. We have wines that are made conventionally that are beautiful, delicious, and we have wines that are made like this, biodynamic. Again, very much like seeing the vineyard as this kind of living thing, where you have these celestial forces, if you will, that come into play, that are being engaged during this grape growing and the winemaking process. So that's my little segue into this wine here. Again, this is 100% Limniona. This particular young vine version that they make is aged in primarily in large oak barrels, so 3,000 to 5,000 liter Austrian oak barrels. So that gives it this kind of, there's a softening effect, but doesn't add a lot of tannin, unlike smaller, let's say like 250-ish liter, Bordeaux barriques or something like that, where you're going to get a lot more oak influence. With this wine, I think they're really aiming to just show the grape, to show what it can do. So jumping into the glass, I always get this kind of beautiful, like earthy blast of cherries, red fruits. You get a lot of that kind of like
further from the Limnion that we had, and like some of those other elements. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's a little this kind of earth and spice to it, which I think is
electric undertone.
It brings me back down into the earth. And yeah, this is a wine that I feel like is not a big heavy hitter of a wine. It's something that still has freshness to it as well. So for me, I think this is a really nicely balanced wine. You can see how this grape could probably be going in a much riper style and a much bigger, even more dial up the the intensity on a lot of the flavors. Or it could also be made into like a rosé. Like they make a rosé from this variety as well. So again, it's something that's pretty versatile. But for me, I think this is a really nicely balanced expression of the variety. So let's jump in and taste.
Also, Zafirakis is one of the first people to do just a pure Limniona. Their first vintage is 2008. Funny enough, despite the ancient origins of this grape, it almost went extinct, and had to be brought back only in the past 30 years. 30, 40 years. Yeah,
I think it was down to something like less than 5 or 10 hectares, which is roughly about 15 acres, something like that, or less, in the 80s, 90s, I think it was. And then so it's definitely one of those historic native Greek varieties that's a again, something you see rarely, but I think more and more you'll see it come into play as people realize it's part of their heritage, and part of their kind of cultural capital that they can access as a Greek winemaker. So yeah, definitely some very interesting aspects there. One moment in here is the one comment here in chat from Jim. Did you drive or fly across Greece to these wine regions? I remember thinking Mount Olympus was a really long way from the Peloponnese Peninsula. We were driving a rental car and based in near Napoleon, so we didn't go too far afield.
We were in Napoleon.
So
actually, we also drove. Sorry,
we were in Napoleon, but this winery actually, Jim, is right near Mount Olympus. So it's to give you a sense of kind of the geography there. So it is actually a bit of a drive from Napoleon. We did not have a chance to visit this winery yet. We didn't make it up to Thessaly on this past trip, but we fully intend to on a future trip to make it up there to Mount Olympus, of course, to pay homage to the the home of the gods. But there is definitely there's definitely a good driving trip in there that we did on the Peloponnese. So
Jim, one of the reasons we weren't able to make it, we went to another winery which was called Santor, and the day before, and when we're speaking about biodynamic practice, this was one of the kind of more focused biodynamic approaches that I've seen. And I was walking through the vineyard with Ryan and Jeff and T, and I'm like, is that Wagner? And there were speakers set up across the entire vineyard and opera playing at all hours, right? So you can kind of see the extent to which true believers will go with biodynamism. I'll say the wines were absolutely delicious. Is it the music and the moon, or is it the attention to detail? Again, as Ryan said, it's
there were
open
crystals
for
in there
debate
too.
There were crystals,
but I mean, again, not to get distracted from the work that
Right.
Jonas was doing in the vineyard, but
Tremendous amount
again,
of focus and work.
to maybe what Dana's saying is in reference to your comment there, Jim, is that we were pretty caught up in some of these vineyards. We wanted to get up to near Mount Olympus and to go get up there and do this, but there are definitely times where we were thinking, oh, we could spend some time here.
Part of it was just the I mean, the nature of the tour we kind of did was based on the Panhellenic Games, which was our first club from this year, actually, in January. But and I mean, if you're kind of wondering what the connection with Thessaly is geographically, Asclepius's mother, Coronis, is from Thessaly, and also Chiron, the centaur who trained him in medicine, is from Thessaly as well. So we kind of wanted to tie those parts of the story into our write-ups and get a wine from there. So that's why we went with this particular biodynamic wine. So that's the connection there. But yeah, definitely in future we would love to do a trip that encompasses some of those other regions. But yeah,
we drove by Mount Helicon, which is in Boeotia, which is the home birthplace of the Muses. Actually, that's where I think the microcosmos was the wines of the Muses. But anyways, there's
another club, yeah,
sacred mountains in Greece, and there's only so many you can get to on an 8-day trip. But
we kind of had to kill our darlings, right? It was very much a focusing trip, and but we were happy to do the hard work for all of you and visit all those vineyards and drink all that wine, so we could focus and just bring you the very best, as we always do. But there's more to explore, and I'm looking forward to doing it with all of you. So
this wine kind of reminds me of a Nebbiolo. That's because of the floral notes and acidity and a little bit of the tannins.
I was going to ask you guys about the tannins, and I was wondering about aging potential for this, because I was thinking about some of the other, like Limnion and others that we've had. This is a 2019. What do you guys think about aging potential for like this varietal? And
yeah, definitely. So I mean, for this, we'll talk about this wine maybe first, and then maybe the variety. Like I would say for this particular wine, there is definitely like a nice kind of, like T said, this like Nebbiolo like grip, maybe Sangiovese Nebbiolo sort of comparison. A lot of that punchy red fruit, a little fine dusting of tannin there. I mean, there's a lot of structure to this wine. When I say structure, I mean acidity, tannin, and there's definitely, I would say, enough to you could definitely lie this wine down. And again, it always depends on what kind of wines you like to drink, of course, but like you could lie this wine down for 5, 7, 8 years and really see it kind of easily, and see it have this kind of softening trajectory. Where you're going to see that kind of more tart red fruit soften into a little bit more kind of like mellowed red fruit. But I mean, for me personally, I think it's drinking really nicely right now, especially as it's opening up. We've had the bottle open for a few hours now. So for pairing something like that, again, like I think anything that has a little bit of like tomato base to it, something that has a little bit more
chicken marsala.
Chicken marsala would be great.
Really
something you could also do something like Cioppino or something like that as well. That had like a little more, a little more tooth to it, for like heartier seafood sort of stuff. But
for like a stew, I'm thinking like a pork.
Good red sauce stew, pork stew, ragu. So we're all sitting here. None of us had dinner yet, so the inspiration is definitely flowing. So, but as far as the variety of aging, again, it depends on the winemaking. So sometimes, again, if you extract a lot of tannin out of this grape, which this grape definitely can have a good amount of tannin and body to it. So if you have a bigger, bolder wine, you can definitely age it. You're going to get more of that tertiary, kind of like earthy, a little more truffly sort of flavors coming out, as you would see with like something like a good Nebbiolo or something like that. So, it really always depends, as always, on what you how you like to drink your wine. Jim asked, would you recommend decanting the Limniano? Actually, I would recommend it. I think especially if it's something where you kind of want to see it sort of soften up and have show a little more fruit, a little more like that sort of sweeter fruit side come out. It tasted really nice out of the gate, but as is the case with almost all wines, getting them open, letting them breathe a bit, is going to bring out more of those, kind of aromatic tones. Pretty much, any wine that's under, a certain age, I'll say, because again, it varies from wine to wine, will benefit with some air, and whites as well. Actually, like the Holy Mania, for example, when we first opened it, tasting really nice, but now when we were tasting it actually just now, it was really like, again, like sweeter, that kind of more like grapefruit oil coming out more. So I always recommend giving your wines a chance to breathe. Decant if you like, or just have a glass and kind of swirl the bottle around a little bit to give it some air.
Just a small point of clarification, we have had I think we've had 3 Limnios. This is actually a different grape than that. The Limniona is more native to Thessaly, and the Limnio is like northern kind of Thrace and Chalkidike and whatnot. I know at one point I think we might have confused those, but those are 2 different grapes for those of you who've been with us for a while. That Limnion is a totally different grape.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I was wondering why actually there was some difference there, and
but I think the characteristics are they taste really similar. I don't have this one in my glass right now, but I know we've compared that one to Nebbiolo and this one to Nebbiolo, so it's kind of. But anyway, I was just thinking back. I know we had that one in last summer, and then we did the Limnion
right
before. But yeah, those are like a northern. Yeah, but similar. I mean, really similar kind of grapes. I think maybe they are connected, but they're definitely like different, distinct varieties now.
Yeah, really important. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well,
yeah, Jeff, you wanna jump to the next slide?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, next slide real quick, Jeff. I think
What's
there's
that,
like a picture. Oh, can you move to the,
Oh yeah, so one interesting thing actually about the Zafirakis production facility here, which is here on the left, they actually also have terracotta vessels, so amphora. They make Limniona in both styles. This one actually is again mostly aged in like the larger 3,000 to 5,000 liter oak barrels. But they make one as well that's made in the clay amphora. So and again, like this is an organic biodynamic winery, definitely falls into the quote unquote natural wine sort of crowd, if you will, but it always depends on how you define it. But you can look at that winery there, it's clean, it is spick and span, it is a winery that I want you to understand that, like, to make a natural wine, you don't have to have like a funky winery that has dirty cellars with mold hanging off the ceilings, which again, you can have wines from cellars that are let's shall we say, like, less spick and span, that make very clean, very delicious tasting wines. But all that is to say is that there's definitely certain dogmas that can be broken in the natural wine crowd that say, hey, you have to have a cellar that looks like this, it's got to kind of feel like this looks too new for a lot of people to be able to say, oh no, that's not natural wine. It's like, okay, well, who's to say? So it's just a little bit of a soapbox there about who gets to call it what in the world of wine there.
I love seeing these like ancient materials when we talk about Qvevri, when we talk about fermenting in clay and clay eggs and ceramic. If only I envy future archaeologists who could excavate something as clear cut as this. That's all I wanted to add.
I mean, the other thing too is that when natural wine started getting big, the term you often see thrown around is low intervention, and that term to me can be a little bit confusing for people, because low intervention has this implication that you're just like, oh, I just throw the grapes in there, and whatever happens, it's just the wines can come out the way it does, right? Vintage variation, and we should embrace it, and things like that. And I think it's kind of confusing, because there's some winemakers who want to have very much of a I kind of just throw the grapes in and like, let's see what happens, and like kind of makes a more maybe a little bit more lees and skin contact and what wines. And then there's this implication that, but then other winemakers like Zafirakis will say, oh, I do low intervention wines, but that doesn't mean that, like, I just, I don't do anything in the vineyards. I just let my vines grow to wherever they grow, or I don't think about cover crops. I just let the seeds grow naturally.
Just mow the weeds. That's it.
Just mow the weeds, and some people are like, I just mow the weeds, and some people do cover crops and
Yeah.
you know.
So in each case, right, you have a vision of where you want to end up,
Mhm.
and you've got methodologies that mitigate risk,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Which is like, okay, we're going to control, like Ryan was saying earlier, we're going to control every aspect of the process because we don't want to mitigate risk, or we're going to work really, really hard using these other biodynamic principles to try to arrive at a place that is,
Mhm.
right, ideal.
Yeah. So again, there's many ways to arrive, like you said, at the destination, and one person's minimal is another person's maximum when it comes to intervention.
Yeah.
Where some people, just to comment on what you're saying there, T. So all this is to say is that when you're shopping for wine, when you read about wine, take some of these blanket statements with a grain of salt. And I know we've said this before, we've discussed this before here on these tastings, but keep an open mind is really what how we believe, and kind of make your own decisions, and don't be too quick to judge. Again, like Dana's saying, walk out in the vineyard of Santor, and there's classical music playing. He's got crystals in the vineyard, and he's telling us about the stars and the moon. And at the end of the day, does the wine taste good? And the wine tastes great, and he's a wonderful person, and does very, very, very good job of maintaining his vines to be happy and healthy. So
and he thinks about what particular cover crops to plant and where to plant the vineyards.
We ate asparagus that was like growing out of the putting nitrogen back into the soil.
Yeah.
And to kind of just to zoom out for a second, a lot of this has to do with the exact topic of this club, which is the intersection of like mysticism and medicine, the intersection of this kind of what's of the magic and the surreal natures of wine, and the actual kind of physical element of a fermented grape juice in your glass. And I think that's we kind of like to remain in a little bit shall we say, like agnostic in that realm, where like hey, there's a lot of kind of kooky stuff you can do if you want to, and at the end of the day, does wine bring you together? Does it make you happy? Does it make you enjoy moments with people? Okay, that's kind of where we sort of step back and say, to decide is on you guys.
In life, whether it's food, whether it's art, whether it's music, are you ruled by your head or are you ruled by your heart? And the truth is, it's a combination of both, right? That's what really like we end up at. And as Ryan said, that was kind of the spirit of what we were trying to approach with this club. And but yeah, it's a fun journey and a wonderful discussion.
Shall we continue this journey?
Yeah,
to the next wine?
Please, exactly. Yeah.
So.
All right. So the next one is also from Thessaly. It's a blend of 40% Cab, 20% Limniona, and 20% Syrah. And it's from the Theopetra Meteor or a PGI, which is it's actually a UNESCO heritage site. There's a beautiful monastery on the hill there, which I didn't know until I looked up this wine, and it looks incredible. But this is grown in vineyards surrounding there. And one thing that's would be interesting for us all to compare and contrast is this wine, which is a blend with Cab and Syrah, with the previous wine, which was all Limniona. And this wine is done in a more modern style. It's blended with international varieties, and it's aged for 12 months in American oak barrels and French oak barrels, and before being aged in bottles for at least a year as well.
T, you said PGI, and we were talking about PDO before.
Yeah.
And I know, so I was like trying to suss out the difference between these two, but
typically PGIs are a little bit more like focused, PDO a little bit larger area, regional versus like more of a distinct appellation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so let's taste this wine. I mean, already you can tell the difference in how oak can affect the nose of a wine. The previous one from Zafirakis, that's done in large 300 to 500 liter, 3,000 to 5,000 liter large neutral Austrian barrels. the barrels you often find some Barolo makers, Piemonte producers use. And this is more on the French side, the French style. You can smell it kind of has a nice toasty note to it. And the wine itself is, you can see how the oak has softened, and as well as the Cab and Syrah, it's kind of softened the natural acidity of the wine. This wine is, whereas the Zafirakis, you probably want a little bit of food with this. This wine like is running out of the gate at you. It tastes good, like you smell it. It's smooth. It's juicy.
I mean, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind a tri-tip with this.
I was gonna say barbecue, something with a lot of fat.
Yeah. It drinks really nice, like you said. Drinks really nicely on its own because it has that kind of like richness and sweetness that comes in from the from the winemaking. But again, like it's definitely a really nice it's a really nice balance between structure and approachability.
Yeah. And a lot of cassis and stewed fruits and
absolutely.
Some light tannins too. Is that from the Cab?
That's also from the oak. So on this, right as I tasted it, so like perception. I mean, like there's a lot of different theories about like how you can taste perceived tannin between grape tannin and oak tannin. So sometimes you get tannins that are imparted from the barrel, other times imparted from the grapes. In this case, it's both.
Which can be skin and stem,
exactly,
or combination.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's that's kind of a distinction to make. You get people who kind of like try to make a hard and fast sort of like, oh, you experience one on your tongue and the other on your like cheeks and like lips, that kind of stuff. I definitely, compared to let's say the last wine, I definitely got more of a tannic impression like on my lips and my gums, my teeth, kind of like on that sort of element. And this is like a relatively young wine for the style. Speaking of aging, I would probably, this is a wine I could definitely lie down for like 5 to 10 years if you wanted to. It also would be something that would take very well to decanting, and it's going to soften up those tannins. It's going to soften up that acidity the longer that it has. So
it's an adjective that it's a serious mother of a wine, right? Not that the other ones have been trivial, but
it's not like a massive wine, but it's definitely bigger. Of the four today, it's the biggest wine. And for us at Ancient Wine Guys in the Ancient Wines Club, this is definitely I would say a wine that presents a little bit younger oak, a little bit more on that kind of like a little bit more bolder sort of structure than maybe we have typically gotten recently, especially from Greece. But I think it presents really nicely. I think it's a really nice, again, like T was saying, just approachable, drinkable at where it's at. But as like Mike Wendy mentioned in the chat, seems like it might age well for a couple of years or so. Like definitely. Like I think this is something that, again, an easy candidate to lie down in the cellar. So that Cab Syrah backbone there gives it good cellar potential.
Jeff, what are you getting off of this?
A lot of the same stuff you're getting. I mean, it's interesting kind of thinking about it as a Cab based blend, and then trying to figure out, like you guys were talking about, what the Limniona is doing to it. And I think that to me it lightens up the body a little bit, lifts it up a little bit more, as opposed to having like I get almost like some more kind of cranberry elements to it, like a little bit of a more tart red fruit than I usually would get from a Cab. I think like blackberry, blueberry, cassis, and those kinds of flavors. I don't have a huge amount of it in my glass, which might also contribute that a little bit, but seems like that Limniona is lifting the wine a little bit toward.
I think that's a great call, Jeff, because if we compare this to say like a pure California Cab from the Central Coast or like another warm climate wine, you would definitely taste one potentially the alcohol more.
Oh, for sure.
And then like just the viscosity might be it might be probably fuller body. This is medium plus versus full.
Definitely. Agreed. I mean, so this again, this style, there's some international elements to this, but again, I think this kind of represents like what Greece has. It's a transition point, right? It's kind of between two worlds. Like I would say 20 years ago, a lot of Greek wines were Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah, like these international varieties. The fact that they have decided to blend in Limniona into this variety, or into this blend, I should say, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's something that they're, but you can also see there's a bit of maybe cautiousness that's kind of coming into it as well, where they're saying, okay, like we have these older varieties, we have these varieties that we know were designed for international sale, for international market, but now we're going to be reintroducing this this kind of like heritage, this history of varieties here. So
and you gotta imagine too, when Greece is coming out of Cold War, people traveling more, and there's an international palette. You're dependent. This is a big tourist area, so like you're thinking about tourists who are coming, and so you're like, well, I don't know whether they're gonna like my peer Limniona, so let me blend it with a little bit of Cab and Syrah.
I mean, I remember my parents went to Meteora in the 90s. I remember, I remember them seeing pictures of the monastery that you mentioned earlier. And it's like, I think about someone traveling in the 90s and looking for a wine, looking for something familiar, something that you could see, that you could pronounce, something that you knew. And of course, like, you can't blame somebody for not knowing a language, if they're traveling to a foreign country, like, that obviously that's part of the experience. But so you can't blame the winemaker for wanting to market something, as in anywhere, like not just Greece, but literally
Lebanon's a great example.
Yeah. So again, I think it's something that as people are becoming more educated about wine, as the market develops and matures globally, as people understand that, hey, you can make great wines from almost any variety. We're seeing these kind of concessions, if you will, to these native varieties coming in.
And palates changing too.
And palates changing as well. Yeah, palates are definitely changing.
Yeah.
Eloise has a question. She asked, did they grow their own Cab and Syrah? And they do.
Yeah.
So this is Cab and Syrah grown in Greece.
Yep. So this is they have it's in a state. So this is the
one,
Theopetra estate. So they have, I don't know the age of the vineyards for the Cab and Syrah, but my guess is probably in like the 20, 30, 40 years old sort of range. So I mean, there's a lot of those varieties planted all over Greece. So yeah. Cool. Great. Well, shall we move on to the next wine there, Jeff?
Yeah, so if you still have the other Holy Mania, it would be cool to, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it would be cool for those of you who do to kind of pour that in to another glass, kind of have a look at these two wines side by side. This is, I mean, you already know all about Trupa, so I won't go into that. This is the Tomi. If you can see on your bottle that the eta sound, it's kind of funny, the eta from ancient Greek is an e sound, but in modern Greek, I think they have something like 8 or 9 sounds that all produce the sound e.
Yeah.
So I've been working on a little bit of modern Greek in my very limited spare time, trying to get up to speed a little bit for next March. I think the other guys have dabbled a little bit too, but it's kind of interesting, just the pronunciation from ancient to modern Greek, but it's pronounced Tomi. Mantinea, same as the other wine. This one is can't remember how much we talked about this with the other one, but it's done this very, very light style, even lighter than the other one. I think if you put them next to each other, is like a Provençal style rosé, and the method for this is actually fairly intensive. So they cool down the grapes immediately after picking them to just above freezing, and then they have basically a cold extraction or cold maceration. So at that temperature, like I think it's like 4 degrees Celsius. And so it keeps a lot of the basically freezes the tannin, so it doesn't take a lot of color from the skin. So this grape already doesn't have a lot of color, but then it gives you this really, really light color rosé, and that's the style. And it also keeps that cold temperature, keeps the aromatics intact a little bit better as well. So basically end up with like an extremely light colored wine that is highly aromatic. I think you notice that immediately with this one, even more so than the other one. That kind of like Gewürztraminer-esque, like stone fruit, like peach and apricot, and all of that kind of comes through. You get a little bit of like maybe nectarine, strawberry, stuff like that too, pear, apple, a little bit on that side. But the main thing for me is like the peach. This like kind of like jumps out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim says the Tommy Rosé is great, and you love it. I mean,
Agreed.
thanks, Jim. We love this wine as well.
Yeah, it's so delicious. We got to try this in the vineyard. This is one of the ones that I think we tried the 2019, yeah, or 2021. We tried the brand new one, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the Holy Mania. I mean, I love these. They're apples and oranges, right? The Holy Mania
Yeah.
versus the Tomei, and it really just shows what you can do with these varietals under different conditions and different styles.
Yeah.
Acertico you were mentioning before, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, right? What I mean of any varietal, but I mean, this is so floral. It's really compared to like what the Holy Mania puts out.
Yeah, and if any of you guys were with us for I think Wines of the Odyssey, we had or was it Wines of Heracles? We did the Hoof and Lore.
Yeah, that was Odyssey. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was Odyssey.
Yeah, and so that was also from Trupus.
No, that was Heracles' team. Remember, it was like the stables of
the stables. Yeah,
that's right.
I think we actually chose that wine because it was a little barnyardy. If I'm not mistaken. Right? Like it had a little natural funk to
wildness
it.
To it. Yeah.
A little wild.
So I mean, it's amazing what Costas has done with one grape.
Well, the Hoof and Lore is that's like the long skin contract.
That's right. Long skin.
That's 100. Is it 100 days?
Yeah, something like that.
So that wine, just for those of you who haven't had that wine, it's almost like blood red. I mean, it is a deep, deep dark, kind of crimson vermilion sort of color that is all still 100% Muscofilero. That again, longer and longer skin contact. This is a grape that similar to like Pinot Gris. Right? Pinot Gris, meaning gray, is a gray wine. Gray grape is like actually kind of this, sort of French term for it. But you can make a rosé, you can make a white out of it. But then again, like we saw, you can make wines that were almost as red as some of these other reds that we're tasting tonight. It's incredible that you can get that much color and pigment out of it.
I am actually. I didn't actually realize that was Muscofilero.
Yeah. The Hoof and Lore.
Holy crap!
Is it Acato? I think he does.
Acato,
He does a few wines that are in this like heavy skin contact style with the Muscofilero grape. So it's something
that's amazing.
It's a very versatile grape. I mean, visiting Trupus was like a masterclass in Muscofilero for us because they're probably one of the most preeminent producers of this variety. And the Mantinea region is. You have to make Muscofilero to call it Mantinea for the appellation, and so the grape is something that they're experimenting with sparkling wines for as well. I think didn't he say he was they're doing a champagne method
that's going to be in like a year or two.
They'll have a champagne method of 100% Mantinea, which again you can see the grape has enough acidity so that you can pick it earlier. If you pressed it off and you don't have any color, you can make essentially a Blanc de Blanc, or I don't know, Blanc de Gris. What would you call this? It's not really it's not really a white grape. It's not really a red grape. So you wouldn't call it a Blanc de Blanc or Blanc de Noir. You would just call it a champagne method. But anyways, it's a very versatile variety, and I think that's something that is actually hard to find in the wine world. So maybe we can make anything with it.
Trupus is a good winery to keep your eyes on. I mean, we picked up. I mean, Muscofilero has some connections to Muscat, and we actually tried some dessert wines. We actually picked up one of like 3 cases of dessert wine that they made.
Did you try that, Dana? You brought that. I know you brought a bottle of that back. Did you?
I did.
Let's open that up.
I did. I brought it back for my wife who likes dessert wines. We haven't opened it up yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. It's kind of curious.
It's so pretty. It's hard to open. It's like a present. We're going to wait for an opportunity. So
yeah,
I'm going to wait for you to come out here, Jeff, and we'll drink.
All right. That was just because that was another question we had a lot on our trip, was just the difference in a wine after it's been, shipped across the ocean, and is brought to you all, and versus what it tastes like when it's in Greece, without all the travel time. So we were kind of curious about that, because we brought back not a ton of wine, but enough where I think we could kind of get a little bit of an idea of that. So it'll be interesting to trying to pop some of these and see, because when you get the opportunity to drink a lot of them over there, and then you see, importing the wine can have an effect, like usually a deleterious effect, right, on the wine. So
I think I mean, during my days working for an importer, and then having tasted the wines, I was working for a French wine importer, would taste the wines in France, and then we would place our orders for the wines, and then 6 months later or whatever, the wines would show up in California. Yeah, it was always kind of this memory game of saying, okay, was I, what was I tasting then? How is it tasting now? And so you learn very quickly to kind of approximate an evolution and a trajectory of a wine by tasting something. Again, when we were tasting the wines in Greece, like we weren't importing them ourselves. So, we're tasting, again, either a newer vintage or something like that, which is actually kind of different for than what you do on the importing side. But like, yes, like Jeff's saying, like travel is definitely something that you need to take into account. I've definitely had winemakers come to the United States and taste wines and taste their own wines, and they go, I had no idea that was what it tasted like after traveling. Because they're tasting wines usually at their winery or in their local markets, or bringing samples with them wherever they go. So it is something to keep in mind, that it happens all the time. Someone tastes the wine and on a really lovely trip to Italy or something like that. Oh, I love this wine. It was France and they had Spain. I love this wine so much. And they go home and they buy it and they're like, huh, it's not the same.
You know what?
There's also some context.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there
there's
as
some
well.
context there. Like I was sitting, like watching the sunset and drinking.
I'm speaking from like the professional aspect, which, if you're buying wines for an importer, like you're very aware of that fact that you're biased by the experience. But
my husband proposed to me with this wine. They're like, oh, you want us to you want us to capture that in a glass every day?
I met winemakers, people who just got an import game, and they quickly learned when you have a wine in Europe, as much as you like it, you don't buy it. You don't buy a container or like a pallet of it on the spot. You go home and you tell them, can you DHL me the samples that I'm interested in?
Always.
Yeah, you have to do it. Yeah.
It's context is big for wine. So again, one of those like subjective, objective sort of, or shall we say like we're talking about, like, kind of the magic and the reality of wine that we kind of got into with this club is a little bit about the mystique versus, what am I actually tasting?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Jim said in the chat, I was going to ask if there are any sparkling wines made with Moscapiello, and didn't know. So there definitely is, and then didn't know it was related to Muscat. So yeah, there's like I believe like a deep kind of ancient connection there to Muscat. And Mike Wendy says work to the fatty cheese. Absolutely. I mean, this is a wine, again, like as far as like versatility. I know we use that word a lot when it comes to certain wines, but I mean, this is one of the four. I would say this is the easiest wine to just kill the bottle. You're like without even thinking about it, where you're just gonna oh, it's gone. It's that kind of thing. But pairing is definitely like aperitif style. Like you can definitely do a lot of different, like kind of, let's say, fatty creamy cheeses, a good triple cream, something like that. But I do think also, like, on the, like, if you're doing like soups, salads, something that has a little bit of like a sweet corn chowder or something like that, and that has a little bit of sweetness to it, where that kind of bright sort of citrus tone can kind of counterpoint the some kind of creamier sort of tones there. So anyways, I think it's a very
bisques, right?
Bisque, okay. Lobster bisque.
Kind of lobster
What do you guys think about that? Yeah.
Seafood, lobster bisque. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, tomato bisque. If you're a vegetarian, you don't want to eat lobsters.
Yeah, this was a perfect example of a wine that we wanted to have in the club super bad. But we had the other ones we needed in the club, so we're like, we have to.
Don't be freaked out by the bottle type too. This is the first bottle of this kind that we've seen.
Yeah, the bottom is a little kind of like fruit, like kind of
a flower shape,
floral sort of shape on the bottom. I've actually not seen that before.
Jeff, you focused a lot on like transportation of wine in the ancient world, and like this one freaked me out because I'm like, there are a lot of points, right? The whole idea of an amphora is like, you've got a shape that is actually structurally sound, and this has lots of edges. So I think this freaked me out. I don't know if it freaked you out, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if the engineers in the house can explain that. If it doesn't make it a little bit more difficult to break the bottom open. I don't know, by setting it down the wrong way on the cement floor. But
there's no punt.
Yeah,
there's no punt on it.
They GPT'd that, and it's fine. Yeah.
When I first tasted these two wines, I thought I liked the Holy Mania better because I thought it had a little bit more acidity to it. But now they're both just really Yeah, it's a hard choice.
Floral,
It is, and this one's more floral.
the floral component of it, like if like I was at a wedding and I just wanted to like celebrate and like I'm not thinking of operas and stuff. Like I mean, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
It's so bright. It almost has like, it feels like a spritz to it.
Yeah.
There's so much
Do you
energy.
think there's a little residual sugar? Actually, I was wondering about that. Like there's a little
I wouldn't be
RS.
surprised. I mean, most wines have a little bit of residual sugar. Like if you run I don't know, like let's say like Napa Cabernet through a test, it's gonna come out somewhere between, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 residual sugar, or like if you're Camus Special Select, it's right around like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 grams residual sugar. Or like Miami Pinot can be, can be up to like 15 to 20 grams of sugar.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that they don't tell you. There's actually certain websites from, for example, like the liquor control board. This is a totally tangent here that I'm going on. Liquor control board for Quebec. If you have a wine that is sold in Quebec, it has to have the residual sugar. So I remember looking up some of these wines and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 18 grams of sugar in that Zinfandel or something like that. It was like, oh, that's more than my Riesling.
Like the Robert Parker of like we have to have residual sugar.
Well, I mean they're very strict apparently. So it was. I
like iced wine. It's sweet.
But for wines that are sold as dry wines. That's what was surprising to me, was like white wines, Chardonnays, Cabernets, Pinots, Zins, that were sold as dry wines. Yeah. But then in my mind, when I looked at it, oh wow, there's actually a lot of sugar in there. So this is one of those things that, again, it comes down to, is the wine in balance? For a wine like Tony here, I would not be surprised if there was at least a few grams of residual sugar, which is fine. Again, that's not added sugar necessarily. That's just how it's bottled. Right. That's just how the wine ended up. It left after fermentation, like residual. But so it always comes down to, like, when you're tasting a wine, your first thought should be about, one, do I like this wine? But two, like, is it balanced? Is there one element of it that is yelling louder than another, if you will, or is there one element that is not present that you feel like makes it a harmonious experience to drink? And so everyone's a bit subjective. Some people like a lot more acidity, some people don't like as much acidity, some people like a lot more tannin or more sweetness or more fruit. Some people want wines that are very austere. Like, it's all depends on what you like. So this is part of developing a palate, is recognizing which element for you is important to be in balance. So just been on the side there.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
really good wine for sure.
Yeah.
So on that note, I mean, we always put this slide up, but if any of these are of interest to you and you want more of any of them, just let us know. What we typically do is we can ship them free to any of our GLS states, along with your club. And if you are, I don't think any of you are on the call, but if you're out of those particular states, it costs us about $5 a bottle. So we can do that easily. So always don't hesitate to reach out to us for more if you want more. Yeah, I would say, I mean, we can open it up to questions after this, but also, I mean, I would say one of my favorite parts about this club is that it's we titled it To Your Health. So I mean, I think we all have a little bit of wine in our glass. So we're just cheers to everybody. Just to your health. Like wine, whether wine is healthy or in a objective scientific sense or not, it makes us happier. It brings us together, and we're all happy to be here and to have you join us and be members of our club. So again, cheers to you and cheers to your health.
To your health.
Yes, indeed.
And to everything in moderation, which is also like inscribed at Delphi, right?
Yeah.
Like so, where we also visited. So let's open it up to any kind of questions that anybody has. We'd love to talk to you guys about our experience traveling through these regions, trying these wines, seeing these sites. If anybody wants to jump on to the Zoom, we'd be glad to talk to you guys as always.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll have Dana talk about asparagus.
I could. It was
wild asparagus.
We cooked it up. It was great from Santor. There's a video, Mike, I can send you of like the Wagner playing. It was like I thought I was hallucinating because I was having such a great time.
Jim mentioned, this is tangential, but I wanted to mention I'm really happy with your GLS delivery service. Their communications are great, and the wines arrive chilled and on time. Wow, that's That's great, Jim.
They
We
show
are,
you what?
yeah,
What?
that's fantastic. I mean, we you know, candidly speaking, as former wine merchants ourselves, like sometimes GLS can be one of those services that they're pretty regional, where sometimes folks get like a GLS driver who, you know, basically, you know, shows up in a '87 Firebird and is basically like, you know, got a mullet and he's blasting Pantera and he's like, here's your wine, you know, kind of toss it out of the cart. Other people, they show up very professionally and very you know, very much on time and very good communication. So we're very happy that you know you have a good experience.
Jim, we really appreciate that input from our New Mexico clients who have a very different approach to GLS. So yeah,
I have to say though, I really like working with GLS, and I agree with you, Jim. And this is for everyone. The difference between GLS and other bigger national delivery service, which I won't mention,
Yes, and FedEx,
you know, is that you can actually get a human being on the line pretty fast.
kind of funny.
And you don't have to go through us, you know, you can literally call them and you can have them potentially schedule like a 3-4 hour time frame when they deliver it to you. You can have it held at their facility if you want to go to their facility, pick it up. Also rerouting packages is not that hard as well. So
Jim,
great.
That's Jim. We really appreciate it. In the
They've been really
logistical
professional here in SoCal.
That's good. Yeah.
Oh, what was that? We didn't hear you. Hey, Mike, was that you?
Sorry, they've been really professional here in SoCal. I was just saying.
That's great. Yeah. So
I think they start out in California, so everything in California is really good. It literally gets there in one day. Yeah.
So as a wine club owners, we're now obsessed with logistics and shipping because that's most of our life. A lot of our life involves handling cardboard and cardboard derivatives. So you know, this is something that we can talk about ad nauseum.
You know, we kiss every box before it goes out to you.
Well, you do.
I do. I give a little kiss to every single box. No, but thanks for that, Jim, because it is, you know, I mean, it is really kind of a question about not just, you know, the care by which these things get to you guys, but also like seriously, like if we are sending stuff over, you know, long distance, we do obviously consider like the time of year, temperature, all those things, you know. So GLS has been a good partner. Yeah.
I mean, when we worked at the wine shop and, you know, we have some customers on the East Coast, all it takes is, you know, you send a December club to someone in New York or Maine. And if it just sits there overnight for like 6-7 hours. I mean, the wine's, you know,
there's supposed to sign for it.
Yeah.
But of course, like, you know, we have these, you know, laws in this country about alcohol that, I mean, I won't go down that tangent because I'll get very upset. But like about, you know, about how to actually ship and deliver wine. And, you know, it happens, you know, more often than we would care to admit about, you know, some shipper just drops off a case of wine on someone's front porch and doesn't make them sign for it, even though it's alcohol and they're supposed to get a signature. And of course, like you're saying, it freezes, the corks all pop out, or it gets too hot and then, you know, the corks all pop out either way. So it's really a shame. So I saw a comment from Eloise. Did you go to any of the islands in Greece? I love the ones I have been to. We did not make it to any of the islands, unfortunately. We were just on a circuit from the Peloponnese, kind of basically Athens, across Athens to basically all the way over to Olympia, so to the west coast of the Peloponnese, and then up across from Patra past Napoleon, not Napoleon, past Naupactos, and then through Delphi, back through Thebes, and then back through Athens. So next time we will probably be doing the same or similar circuit, but we have a lot of interest in getting out to the islands.
Eloise, particularly Crete, you know, for those of you guys who've been, and I think Eloise, you've been with us as, you know, very, very early on. Number 3, I think we did Crete, Isle of the Gods. And of course, the wines from Crete are unbelievable, and the history and the archaeology are like tied to that. So, I think we'd like to get out to, and we were just talking about other.
There's so many amazing wines out there, like again, Santorini, Mykonos, all these sort of. I mean, the Greek islands are. I mean, every Greek person we were talking to especially when we were going through like, the hinterlands of the Peloponnese are like, what are you doing here? Like, go to the islands. There's the sense of like,
the tourist angle, and I want to throw this in, like the tourist angle versus like we were in Nemea, right, where we've been talking about Asurtico. We've been talking about like some of the most Agoritico, I'm sorry, not Asurtico. We've been talking about like some of the most dynamic places where fantastic wines are being produced, and we couldn't find a hotel when we were out there, right?
Oh,
It's really interesting to see this interplay because we're talking about Central Peloponnese, we're talking about like amazing agricultural land, we're talking about farmland,
archaeology history.
And sure, people want to go to Olympia, sure, people, but Nemea, maybe not, maybe Isthmia, maybe not, right? I mean, they were kind of off the beaten track. So this is, I think, where this interplay that we're talking about comes like full force when we're like looking at coming to some of these unexplored regions, trying some of these amazing wines that are really, really off the beaten path. And and
from the tourist path, especially. I mean, from the average Greece going tourist, I should say.
Not to take an iota away from Santorini,
of course,
but we've seen that Instagram post.
Right? No, I mean,
the calendar picture.
Right. And again, like it's not that say we won't be going there. There's definitely it's on our roadmap.
There's a reason it's so popular.
Yeah.
But I think we're trying to fill out the broader spectrum of what's available and like break new ground.
Yeah. Like you're saying, Dana. I mean, that trip that we went on really. There was a sense when we were in some of those regions, like you said, like hard to find a hotel in some of these regions. And you're like, oh, that means that even Greeks aren't going to some of these regions that often. And so for us to go with this kind of like, hey, there's some amazing things happening that are happening here in the wine world, and amazing things that have happened in history and mythology in these places. That's kind of what made it fun. Is like it was an adventure for us. We did feel like we were like, oh, we're definitely going off the beaten path a little bit, and blazing a trail in a number of ways. So we're bringing tourism to some of these regions that they were very happy to have us there. In let's say Nemea, Mantinea, like because they're not at the top of someone who's going to say, oh, I'm going to go to Greece for 10 days or 8 days or whatever it is. Mantinea is like probably not at the top of most people's lists, but like we can, it's something that we felt like we could turn into an experience that is, again, it's unique. It's not something that's going to be like, that something that everybody else has done. So
I mean, it was stunning. We had 2 sites around Nemea and 2 wineries that we visited in Nemea, and there's no hotel in Nemea.
Eloise just mentions, right?
I did stuff off ships both times. I went off ships.
I went off.
I was cruise ships.
Exactly, which is like a big thing where a lot of it's like cruise ships on like a certain circuit, and like then you don't get to actually get out towards get out deeper into some of the countryside there, and not to say that it's any worse, it's just different. If we're looking for like this kind of this experience of the old Greece, if you will, where you're getting out into the parts of the Greece where again we're going back thousands and thousands of years for something that happened, that draws us there from ancient and from antiquity, versus a really, let's say, a beach or something like that that's more modern, as far as like how it's developed touristically. It can be kind of a different experience.
What can a van leave a cruise ship to and then come back
in one day
and provide and I'm always amazed at that, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the question is, right, what else is there to explore? Halkia was a great example, right? Halkia, we've had some of these wines, and Nemea is a phenomenal space. And anyway, we're looking forward to continuing this conversation with all of you guys.
Jim mentioned that we had to stay in an Aptheon area to find a hotel in that area, and like so did we. We were looking for hotels around, and was like, wow, there's nothing here. And unfortunately, our contact, she's based in Athens, but she'll be our tour guide or helping us run this tour. Orania, she recommended Aptheon as well, in which as you can see, is a bit out of the way compared to, it's not that far, but it is, and you think, oh, I did have to drive, 45 minutes or so.
But we wanted to see Epidaurus. We wanted to see other elements. We wanted to see Mycenae, which was a little bit farther to the south. But like for the site of Nemea, like Nemea, when we talk about Nemea as a Panhellenic site, when we talk about Nemea as, the premier winemaking, site in Greece, it's amazing. Not a single hotel. Right. So, I mean, we're kind of talking about breaking new ground, and it's hard to say in 2023 that there's unexplored terroir.
Sure.
But there is. And I think that was something that was a big takeaway from like that trip was like, I was like, oh man, are we kind of like on the cutting edge of this a little bit? Are we kind of like breaking a little bit of new ground? It's something we've talked about for ages, that you guys have been with us for ages. It's remarkable stuff, and we had a fantastic time. We're really excited to share it with you guys.
Yeah. Well, if there's any other questions, we're happy to answer. Happy to, as always, we're always happy to chat. Feel free to shoot us emails anytime.
Instagram,
whatever, any method that you find appropriate.
Any other questions before we let you guys go? Jeff, you got any final remarks for us?
No, I think you guys covered it. Yeah.
I have a music question.
Yeah, please.
So there was opera at the winery.
There was
at one of the wineries. Yes.
Unfortunately, none of the ones that we had tonight, but yes,
we had their wine in the previous club.
In a previous club, we did have Santor.
It was so Santor.
We wanted to get the wines for this club, small production. The importer here sadly is sold out. I literally told them, I said, buy as much as you can next time of these wines. So it's a very fun winery, the Santor winery. We had a Roditis from them in that. Was it last club?
Yeah.
Was it the it was no, it wasn't last club, it was in January, I think, or maybe
Panhellenic.
Panhellenic, yes. Yeah. So anyways, the music in the vineyard was that was a real deal. It was a real experience there.
Yeah.
Also, that's technically not biodynamic practice. I mean, it's beyond biodynamic.
Oh,
it's like something. Yeah. It's technically not within the, like, you don't need to play music to be Demeter certified.
By the way, I think it's also really funny that Greece uses, what was it?
Biohellas.
Biohellas, because Demeter was taken.
Yeah. Which is organic certification.
Oh, it's not
biodynamic certification.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's organic
certification. So Demeter will still do.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
ironic in a moment. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Todd, you're saying you had a question about the music?
Well, some of us, our wines are serenaded by Pantera on the delivery routes, but I'm just curious. I'm interested in each one of your opinions. And if you put classical, you have to pick a composer. But if you were to make the recommendation to the winery of what music you think they should serenade the vines with, what would you pick?
Oh, wow.
Constant serenading of the vines. I feel like classical works for me as well. I'm probably gonna go with like Jean Sibelius, some some classical symphony or like something along those lines of maybe like more like a romantic era composer, something like that. Something with a little bit of emotion to it.
This is why you trust the Ancient Wine guys to bring you things, because for me, it's the Talking Heads and it's Psycho Killer on repeat.
I think I'd go with the classical composer from the country you're in. If your grapes are French, you got to have Debussy, or Austrian wine, you got to have Mozart. I don't know. That seems logical to me.
I like it.
You're going to get a holistic treatment, Todd.
I like this. This is excellent. What's your pick?
I don't know. I like Beethoven piano sonatas.
Do I have to be the one holdout?
I'm changing mine. It's Guns N' Roses.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for coming over to the other side.
All right.
Yeah, Cold November rain.
Yes. So For epic wines, I recommend O Fortuna, says Jim. Yeah, you know, I have to say, like, the the mindset of the winemaker and the music behind it, you know, it all comes together.
To Jeff's point, it's got to be more in line, right, with the winemaker, the region. It's got to be contextual for sure, right? But I mean, like we just saw with how, you know, with Trupus, you know, there are people that are willing to buck the trends. But what I think we really, really, really enjoy, at least what I really enjoy, is when we see people bucking the trends with modern winemaking, that also is using practices that harken back to history. They're pulling varietals that, you know, have ties to the regions. It's not necessarily like, you know, zero compromise, but
Sure.
it's finding balance, and it's finding new ways to kind of like push the conversation forward, right? So yeah, that's
at the end of the day, if you're not having fun,
yeah,
what are you doing?
100%.
You know,
100%.
like that's
Yeah.
that's something that I see a lot in winemaking, is that it becomes a job
Yeah.
for people. And especially I remember when I was working for the French wine importer, I had the opportunity to work with a woman named Aline, and she was French but lived based in Los Angeles. Anyways, we were a very small operation, and I always remember her telling me, you know, when I'd say, hey, let's go meet this new winemaker, and or I have this great wine, you know, we should go talk to this person in France. And she'd be like, well, she'd be like, what's you know, what's his vibe? What's his face look like? Does he look like a nice guy? And I'd be like, what? Like, is it's about the wine? And she'd be like, well, yeah, but if they're not having fun, if they're not someone who has like a good personality, if they're not doesn't have a good heart, then the wine that you tasted may have been good at that moment, but the trajectory of the winery, of the business, if someone's not having fun with what they're doing, then it's actually kind of a business decision to say, okay, I don't want to work with somebody who's not having fun, because they're probably not going to stick around doing it. You know, and this was her philosophy, which I always thought was kind of, you know, you know, it's a take, exactly. When you say, okay, but I strongly resonate with, like, are you having fun?
Yeah.
If you're having fun with the wines, if you enjoy the wines, you know, first and foremost, do you enjoy the farming or the winemaking or the wine drinking of the wine?
When you taste that glass,
then you're in the right place.
Like, are you tasting truth with a capital T, right?
Sure,
Like,
right.
I mean, so we're gonna kind of continue to foment our wine jihad, like on the back end. You know, we have our opinions. We're going to bring you guys the opportunity to make your own choices, and to talk to us about what you're experiencing. This is why this is so much fun. So
the one thing I'll say about was really interesting talking about Panos, who of this Santor wines, was when he was telling us about how he makes these like tians, like for, you know,
preparations, tisanes from the local plants,
you know, in order to, you know, for like to put on the vines so that insects don't go after them. And he says, you know, every year for one of them I hand stir it, and he's like, I believe it's important, even though it's a lot of work, a lot of energy I'm putting in there. The other ones, I think he has like a mechanical stir.
I was half joking about religion, but like honestly, visiting Santor, I mean, you're talking about true believer level, and we experienced this also in Georgia.
Yeah,
you know, where natural wines, like there was almost a fervor tied to, you know, this is how you make wine. This is like tied to a philosophy. And often you'll find with winemakers too that there's a story tied to their progression to this. It was like, I left Rome and I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, and now I'm doing this amazing wine. You know, I'm connecting with nature. There's a reason these things resonate, and there's a reason that they make fantastic wine.
Yeah, exactly. And Panos was saying, it's important for me to do it because I feel like I need to put my energy into the vineyard.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, you know, an important thing, right? Like whether you believe in, you know, in like moon cycles or classical music or whatnot, he's believing that he's putting energy,
his own energy, physical energy into the making of the wines. And that was something that stuck with me.
It was on display as we walked through the vineyard too. Yeah. Remarkable stuff.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
Well,
all right, everybody.
folks, yeah. thanks so much. Unless there's any other questions there.
Jeff, you want to close us out? You want to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just say thanks everybody as always. It's such a pleasure getting the opportunity to answer some questions, ask some questions, and try some of these interesting wines. Super excited about Greece next March. And our next club, we're gonna actually go somewhere we haven't gone before, which is to Tuscany. So something to look forward to, wines of the Etruscans. So we've done a lot of Italian wine, but this is a, obviously super famous wine region and a lot of amazing history, and we're really excited about it. It's going to be a pretty quick turnaround with this one as well. So kind of stay tuned for the highlights of that, the kind of preview for that. So yeah, and as always, reach out to us with any orders and any other questions, and we're always happy to hear from you. So
Hey, and can we just end this with a specific Sante to your health?
To your health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I drink all my wine, but here you go. Cheers.
We're still working on ours, but yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks.